Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devyam Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Madhirayet Nasta Preshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Creation in the Fourth Order, Chapter number 22. Prithu Maharaj meets with the four Kumaras. Text number 6. And so, Ajitation Mridanga playing teacher, and devotee who encouraged me to perform more Mridanga playing with Lalita. But actually, she encouraged me in a lot of different ways. Also, my deity worship came from Lalita's encouragement. And so now it is going strong for many months, almost a whole year, doing deity worship every day. And it all came from Lalita Priya's encouragement. So she's a very encouraging devotee. So it's kind of a difficult little middle line here. Swadishneshu viva pavakan. Hatakasana asinan. Swadishneshu viva pavakan. Sorry. Swadishnesh viva pavakan. Shraddha samyama samyukta. Prita praha bhagavagrajan. Hatakasana asinan. Swadishnesh vivak pavakan. Shraddha samyama samyukta. Prita praha bhagavagrajan. Hatakasana asinan. Swadishnesh vivaka pavak. Swadishnesh vivapavakan. Shraddha samyama samyukta. Prita praha bhagavagrajan. One more time. Hatakasana asinan. Swadishnesh vivapavakan. Shraddha samyama samyukta. Prita praha bhagavagrajan.
Hatakasana asinan.
Hatakasana asinan.
Swadishnesh vivapavakan.
Swadishnesh vivapavakan.
Shraddha samyama samyukta.
Shraddha samyama samyukta.
Prita praha bhagavagrajan.
Prita praha bhagavagrajan.
Hatakasana asina.
Hatakasana asinan. Swadishnesh vivapavakan. Shraddha samyama samyukta.
Prita
Prita Prabhavagajan. Hatakasana Asinam. Swadishne Shrivapabakan. Shraddha Samyama Samyukta. Prita Prabhavagajan.
Hatakasana Asinan.
Hatakasana Asinam. Swadishne Shrivapabakan. Shraddha Samyama Samyukta. Prita Prabhavagajan. Word for word. Hataka asane. On a throne made of gold. Asinan. When they were seated. Swadishneshu. On the altar. Eva. Like. Avakan. Fire. Shraddha. Respect. Samyama. Restraint. Samyukta. Being decorated with. Prita. Pleased. Praha. Said. Ava. Lord Shiva. Agrajan. The elder brothers. Translation. The four great sages were elder to Lord Shiva, and when they were seated on the golden throne, they appeared just like fire blazing on an altar. Maharaj Prithu, out of his great gentleness and respect for them, began to speak with great restraint as follows. Please repeat. The four great sages were elder to Lord Shiva, and when they were seated on the golden throne, they appeared just like fire blazing on an altar. Maharaj Prithu, out of his great gentleness and respect for them, began to speak with great restraint as follows. Purport. The Kumaras are described herein as the elder brothers of Lord Shiva. When the Kumaras were born out of the body of Lord Brahma, they were requested to get married and increase the population. In the beginning of the creation, there was a great need of population. Therefore, Lord Brahma was creating one son after another and ordering them to increase. However, when the Kumaras were requested to do so, they declined. They wanted to remain brahmachari throughout life and be engaged fully in devotional service of the Lord. The Kumaras are called Naishtik Brahmachari, meaning they are never to marry. Because of their refusal to marry, Lord Brahma became so angry that his eyes became reddish. From between his eyes, Lord Shiva or Rudra appeared. The mode of anger is consequently known as Rudra. Lord Shiva also has a Sampradaya party, known as the Rudra Sampradaya, and they are also known as Vaishnavas. Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Jnanatamarandhyasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurue Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sagana Raghunathan Tanta Jivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostite Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavanishvari Vishubhanu Shruti Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Ashtata Shatarine Namaste Jivanandaya Dasaya Vanacharine Prabhupada Vallabhaya Singha Vinodine Agyana Dwanta Gramanam Pashtata Patitatmanam Jnana Guru Te Chitarine Jakshashe Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Haribol. So, great opportunity. Take the opportunity. I can jump on the opportunity to give a brahmachari class because we have, speaking of the four Kumaras, but we won't be too heavy. So this is a nice, actually, point that Prabhupada's bringing out and that I'll focus on, is that when the Kumaras were born out of the body of Lord Brahma, they were requested to get married and increase the population. And continue on. When the Kumaras were requested to do so, they declined. They wanted to remain brahmachari throughout life and be engaged fully in the devotional service of the Lord. So there's the essence of it all, that whether brahmachari, not brahmachari, whatever you may be, the desire to remain fully engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. That's the important point you can bring out here, is that to the degree we want to do our own thing, to that degree we'll have to suffer and we'll have to take birth again and again. To that degree, we want to do our own thing. We have to, we want to have our own program. My Guru Maharaj often says that self-interest is the ultimate destroyer of devotional service. When you put your own self-interest, your own personal motivation ahead of Krishna's motivation, Krishna's interest, at that point, you enter into the material energy. So that really makes us understand that we're actually all on the same team. We're on Lord Chaitanya's team, Lord Chaitanya's mission. And we have to perform his mission in proper accordance with the 6 Goswamis, with the previous acharyas. In that way, we can actually fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya. So even in the Krishna consciousness movement, you find sometimes people who have their own agenda. You have devotees, or you have, preachers or so forth, that have their own concoction about how to preach. They have their own idea about what they want to do without following the authority of the acharyas. And in that way, it becomes a material activity, because you're leaving the internal potency of the Lord. Because the internal potency of the Lord, that which is under the jurisdiction of Srimati Radharani, that potency is only accessed through the devotees of the Lord and through the acharyas. It's an insider secret to be engaged in Krishna's devotional service. You can't get it any other way. You have to get it from a bhakta. You have to get it from someone who's engaged in devotional service factually engaged in the service of God. And you have to engage in that devotional service in accordance with them. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Otherwise, you won't get the right result. So we have to understand that each acharya, each guru, is following in the footsteps of previous acharyas and ultimately following the footsteps of Rupa Goswami. He's the actual, Prabhupada says in the Nectar of Devotion, Nectar of Instruction, that Rupa Goswami is the overseer. He's the manager of the Krishna consciousness movement. It's happening under his direction. So you have to understand Rupa Goswami's mood and his instructions, and we can't understand them on our own. We have to see that through the lens of our spiritual master, through Srila Prabhupada, and in that way we can actually access that factual devotional service. And when we engage in that devotional service, we get the certain result, but otherwise the result is not there. So this personal motivation is the killer of our spiritual life. that we want to do our own thing. And so people can use devotional service as a means to gain fame, profit, adoration, distinction. They can use devotional service as a means to do so many different things. But actually, devotional service is simply becoming the servant of the servant of the servant of the Vaishnavas. So the Kumaras, they wanted to remain brahmachari and be engaged fully in the devotional service of the Lord, because that, having to deal with, something like I have to engage in some type of sense gratification. I have to engage in this. And it can be dovetailed, of course, in Krishna's service. Everything can be dovetailed. We have our propensities. But ultimately, the pure devotional service, the pure platform of devotional service is here, be fully absorbed, hearing, chanting, remembering, offering prayers. Anybody on that platform is fully immersed. So in order to deal with our various anarthas, there's different programs that the Lord has supplied us, like the program of Varnashram Dharma, which Lord Chaitanya rejects. When Ramananda Roy is speaking with Lord Chaitanya, and Lord Chaitanya is asking what's the highest thing, the first thing he says is Varnashram Dharma. Do your duty in the material world. If you're a grihasta, be a grihasta. If you're a kshatriya, be a kshatriya. If you're a brahmachari, be a brahmachari. Do it nicely and then go through the process. The Lord Chaitanya says this is low. I reject this. And ultimately it comes to the platform of the gopis, which are fully absorbed in the devotional service of the Lord without any thought of their self, without any reservation. That is actual devotional service. So our acharyas describe that actually pure devotional service is just the 9 processes. That's it. That's pure devotional service. And the secondary things, or the corollary things like marriage and varnashram and sannyas, all those things are considered secondary because they help facilitate that absorption in hearing and chanting for different people at different times, in different places, in different circumstances. But ultimately, the goal is to be absorbed in hearing, chanting, remembering the Lord. That's our goal. So the Kumaras didn't need to be married. They didn't have that desire to work through. They were pure devotees from birth. Essentially, they were jnanis when they were born. They were enlightened with transcendental knowledge. They weren't devotees just yet. They actually became devotees by smelling the tulsi leaves offered to the feet of the Lord. It's a beautiful story. Maybe we'll tell it in a bit. But they were already jnana. They already had jnana, which jnana means they understand they're not this body. Therefore, they're not pulled by the needs of the body. And so what does Krishna say? He says, Bahunam janmanamante jnanavam mam prapadyate vasudevam sarvamiti sa mahatma sadurlabha. That Bahunam janmanamante, after many, many births and deaths, jnanavan mam prapadyate, one who actually possesses jnana, mam prapadyate, he surrenders unto me. So a person possessing jnana, or possessing the knowledge that they're not this body, their only desire is to surrender to Krishna. Brahmabhuta prasanatma nasochati nakankshati samasarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labhate param. That the Brahmabhuta, someone who's transcendentally situated and fully joyful, he's no longer desiring nor lamenting. He's situated on the platform of realization. Therefore, he sees all the living entities equally. And he can engage mad bhaktim labhate param. He attains pure devotional service unto me. So devotional service in one sense begins at that stage of jnana, begins at that stage of understanding I'm not this body. So we may not be at that level, therefore we're practicing sadhana bhakti. Krishna says, just fix your mind upon me, the personality of Godhead. He says, and if you can't do that, follow the rules and regulations of bhakti yoga and develop a desire to attain me. So we're following the rules and regulations of bhakti yoga and therefore developing a desire to attain Krishna. And the beautiful thing about the process of sadhana bhakti is that it immediately cleanses us of our anarthas, immediately. So not only is it the process, it's also the goal. It becomes the goal at the later stage when I'm no longer hearing and chanting as a matter of rules and regulations. I'm hearing and chanting as a matter of love because of spontaneousness. I'm chanting just because I love to chant. I am waking up in the morning just because I love to wake up and go see Krishna. It's spontaneous devotional service. Whereas at the beginning stage, one is practicing sadhana bhakti. One is applying with their intelligence rules and regulations onto themselves so that they can develop the desire to obtain Krishna. So the Kumaras, they were already situated on the platform of Brahmabhuta. They had no desire. Sama sarveshu bhuteshu, they saw everybody equally. Nasochati nakangshati, they had no desire. So the desire for marriage wasn't there even to, deal with. They had nothing to deal with, no anarthas to deal with. They were free of lust. So they chose to remain as 5-year-olds their entire existence and are still remaining as such. And the oldest living beings in the universe, kind of trippy. Oldest living beings in the universe, but they are 5 years old. And so, but they didn't have any personal motivation whatsoever. Their only motivation was spiritual. I want to become spiritually enlightened. I want to attain a higher level of spiritual consciousness. Therefore, they rejected the order of Lord Brahma, which is seriously significant because Lord Brahma is the spiritual master of the universe. Yet his order was rejected. And there's actually one story Guru Prasad Maharaj tells. He says that actually his temple president was trying to force him to get married when he was a brahmachari. He says, no, you need to get married. There's these girls, they need husbands, and you're here, and you should surrender and get married. And Guru Prasad Maharaj said, well, the Kumaras didn't get married on the order of Lord Brahma. I may not be the Kumaras, but you're certainly not Lord Brahma. So Guru Prasad Maharaj remained brahmachari and took sannyas and was doing actually amazing service in ISKCON, initiating spiritual master, a very sweet devotee. But yeah, so that understanding that whatever position one may be in, whether one is a householder or a brahmachari or in any position, the central point is that we don't have any personal motivation. So, of course, for someone who's like the Kumaras in their case, there was no need for them to get married. Therefore, they remained brahmachari so that they can engage simply in hearing and chanting. But you find in Lord Chaitanya's Leela that almost all the devotees are householders. They also have no personal motivation. Srivas Pandit, Advaita Acharya, Lord Nityananda also became a grihasta. So 3 of the Panchatattva are householders. And then Lord Chaitanya and Gadadhar Pandit were sannyasis. But Ramananda Roy, so many devotees in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes that were householders. But still that theme is there, that everything for Krishna, nothing for me. That's the consciousness of the devotee. Everything for Krishna, nothing for me. Krishna will supply me everything I need, so I don't have to worry. I don't have to reserve anything. I can give everything to Krishna. And that's devotional service. And so wherever one's at in life, we should make decisions based on what's going to get us there, because most devotees aren't on that level. Most devotees have their own personal dealings they have to deal with. They have their own anarthas. They have material desires to work through. And therefore, we have to go through the system of varnashram. We have to go through the ashrams. We have to work through different things. So in both cases, whether one is a brahmachari or a grihasta, actually they're dealing with the same thing. It's just a different way of dealing with it, unless one's a paramahamsa. And if anybody's a paramahamsa here, please accept my obeisances. Everyone is a paramahamsa. Okay. Yeah. So Prabhupada's a paramahamsa, right? Then we can say. So yeah, unless you're a paramahamsa, unless you're completely free of material desire, completely liberated soul above all material energy, you're having to work. We're going through anartha vritti. We're working through impurities, and so we have to deal with that. And so the brahmacharis are dealing with that same ultimately lust by sense control, by hearing and chanting very intensely, by engaging everything in the service of the guru, by living with other devotees, by doing immense amounts of service, preaching, and that way they're transforming and purifying that energy. And the grihastas are doing the same thing through the grihasta ashram. They're also purifying that same energy of lust by having children, working, having a household, raising Krishna conscious children, engaging their money in the service of the Lord, supporting the sannyasis. In that way, they're also using that energy for the Lord's service and purifying it. But in both cases, purification is taking place. And unless and until one is on the Paramahamsa stage of being free from material desire, being free from all anarthas, in each ashram, whether renounced or not, if we're following the rules and regulations of Bhakti Yoga, we're being purified. So in that sense, every devotee is glorious and should be given all respect for walking the path of Krishna consciousness. So it's described that, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he didn't go up to the level of sannyas. He came down to the level of sannyas. He came down to that level to relate with the world. He was already far beyond material sannyas. So, yeah, we're working through. We're not the Kumaras yet. Maybe someday we will be on that level. And it's also worth noting that if one has knowledge, if one has jnana, if one can understand they're not this body, Bhakti Yoga becomes very easy. And that's why, Srila Prabhupada focused so much on this, you're not this body. Second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada spoke about that so much. Almost every single lecture is focused on that you're not this body, this is not your home. We should go back home, back to Godhead by chanting Hare Krishna. Now, why do you think that is? Prabhupada focused on that so much. Right, yeah. The essence. Some people criticize, other, unscrupulous people. They say, oh, Prabhupada, he didn't talk about the highest thing. Prabhupada wasn't talking about Gopi Bhav, and Prabhupada wasn't talking about Krishna's pastimes. And yeah, that's because Prabhupada was in actual knowledge. And Prabhupada understood things as they were. And Prabhupada was following the footsteps of the previous acharyas. And Prabhupada understood Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma, Nasochati Nikankshati, Samasarveshu Bhuteshu, Mad Bhaktim Labhate Param. That only if you can realize you're not this body is the devotional service take place in full. How could we even possibly relate to the devotees in the spiritual world if we still have lust in our heart? We can't even possibly relate to them, understand them. How do we understand Krishna's pastimes if we have lust in our heart? So Prabhupada understood that very clearly and understood that first off, we have to become purified of material consciousness, and then all of that stuff becomes manifest. So he understood that perfectly well and therefore focused on that. And the process is the same. Some people, they have a very serious misunderstanding of Raganuga Bhakti. There's two types of sadhana bhakti. There's Vaidhi sadhana bhakti and there's Raganuga sadhana bhakti. That's how it's described in the Nectar of Devotion or in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. It's not Raganuga Bhakti, it's Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. So it's still a sadhana, it's still a spiritual practice. Vaidhi Bhakti means devotional service that is done following rules and regulations. Done following rules and regulations. So we're practicing sadhana bhakti. We're waking up in the morning, we're chanting a prescribed number of rounds, we're taking Krishna Prasadam, we're worshiping the deity according to the Pancharatrika Vidhi. We're doing all these different processes, and in that way practicing sadhana bhakti to fix our mind upon Krishna. And Raganuga Bhakti, we generally translate that as spontaneous devotional service, but if you actually break down that word and you understand what it means, Anuga means follower. We call ourselves Rupa Nugas, mean followers of Rupa Goswami. Gaudiya Vaishnavas are called Rupa Nugas, followers of Rupa Goswami. And sometimes in ISKCON we say we're Prabhupada Nugas, we're followers of Srila Prabhupada. So Raganuga means you're followers of those who have rag. What is rag? Rag means immense attachment and love for the object of love, raga. So who are the devotees that have raga? The devotees in Vrindavan. Ragatmika bhakti. That's another word used in the devotion, in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Ragatmika bhakta means the devotees in Vrindavan. They're called Ragatmika bhaktas. So Mother Yashoda, Nanda Maharaj, Subal, Sridham, Madhu Mangal, Radharani, Lalita Saki, Vishaka Saki, Govardhan Hill. Those are Ragatmika bhaktas. They're bhaktas who have rag all the time. They're always attached to Krishna in any circumstance, all the time, fully surrendered and attached to Krishna's service. Nityasiddhas, never ever conditioned at any point. So Raganuga bhakti means following those devotees. So performing devotional service while following in the footsteps of the devotees of Vrindavan. So it's described in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And also in the Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada describes it. But if you really want to go deep into the Nectar of Devotion or the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, I recommend somehow or another getting a hold of the Waves of Devotion by Damodara Swami. It's a study guide of the Nectar of Devotion, and it really opens a lot of doors. And it's what our Bhakti Shastri Nectar of Devotion was based off that. Really powerful and very nectar. So the Raganuga Bhakta are those with spontaneous attachment for the Lord. They're developing that, and internally they're relating to Krishna in a certain mood. So by their attachment, after long practice of sadhana bhakti, long practice of hearing and chanting, they begin to develop attachment for a certain rasa, a certain relationship with Krishna. They begin to think about the cowherd boys. They begin to really, really love to hear about the cowherd boys, or to hear about the gopis, or to hear about Mother Yashoda and Nanda. And they begin to hear intensely about that. And out of attachment for those pastimes, they begin to meditate on them and hear about them all the time. Externally, they're still chanting Hare Krishna. They're still waking up for Mangal Arti. They're still taking Krishna Prasadam. They're still doing all the activities of the Vaidhi Bhakta. They're still sadhakas. But internally, they're beginning to relate with Krishna in the mood of a resident of Vrindavan. So from the external perspective, you cannot tell the difference between a Raga Bhakta and a Vaidhi Bhakta. You know, when you see someone like Rupa Goswami, they were setting the perfect example. If we're actually followers of the Goswamis, they were perfect sadhakas. Sanatana Goswami, who's Lavanga Manjari in the spiritual world, and was, you know, a personal associate of Lord Chaitanya, who Lord Chaitanya embraced regularly. This is not normal personality. Sanatana Goswami. Sanatana Goswami wrote the Hari Bhakti Vilas, which is a rule book, a very intense rule book on devotional service. It's so intense that Srila Prabhupada recommended we don't even read it, because we will get bewildered by thinking that, you know, well, actually, Prabhupada said you'll get puffed up if you read the Hari Bhakti Vilas. You'll think that, oh, you know all the rules and regulations. So Prabhupada gave us, you know, our version of that.
It's funny because you do see that.
Yeah, right. It's actually, yeah. And you find actually things like, there's things, or forgive me, whoever, there's things in like ISKCON Disciples course that are from there that Prabhupada never said, never quoted one time, and they're used. And they're in a place, they're in a place in the Hari Bhakti Vilas that was never quoted by any of our acharyas. And we don't follow any of those rules, but because of political agendas, people take these statements of the Hari Bhakti Vilas out and use them to push their own political agenda or their own idea in devotional service, because I have my own agenda. But actually, if we want to follow that section of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, all right, we don't eat any spinach. We stay up all night on Ekadasi, and you also fast on the day before Ekadasi. So there's so many things, intense rules, and we take one slip out of it and place it in, you know, something. But that's actually, yeah, we should follow Prabhupada. What did Prabhupada say in his books? That's how we should relate to the previous acharyas. My Guru Maharaj gave me a very serious instruction when I first started, you know, taking shelter of him. He said, you know, read Prabhupada's books a lot, study Prabhupada's books, know Prabhupada's books, and don't even bother looking at the other acharyas' books until you can see them through the lens of Srila Prabhupada's books. Because how could we understand the previous acharyas without, first off, having surrendered to our founder acharya? So, yeah, that's just a little side rant there. But, yeah, so that, like, Sanatana Goswami wrote the Hari Bhakti Vilas. It's full of rules and regulations. Yet he was the most advanced Raganuga Bhakta imaginable. He had Prema Bhakti. Yet he practiced sadhana. Why, the Goswamis, they also chanted rounds and counted rounds. They also worshipped deities. So they were practicing sadhana bhakti. So someone who's on that platform of pure spontaneous love externally may appear like a very intense sadhaka, but internally they're cultivating a mood of devotion like that of those in the spiritual world. And it goes on further to describe in the Waves of Devotion that, even those characters in the spiritual world who have raga, they have a sadhaka form. It's like if we want to follow in the footsteps of the manjaris, we actually, we have that attachment to, the manjaris. How do we follow? Well, who's the head of the manjaris? Rupa Manjari. Rupa Manjari. So Rupa Manjari appeared in this world as Rupa Goswami. So if we want to follow, externally, we follow Rupa Goswami, and internally we'll develop that proper mood. But so in any case, we have to follow these rules and regulations. And then that spontaneous love develops. So the process of bhakti is both the goal, the goal is hearing and chanting, but it's also the process of developing that taste for hearing and chanting. So in any case, we're following. So yeah, sometimes devotees may criticize Prabhupada for speaking so simply, but we have to realize we're not this body. And at that stage, it becomes very easy for devotional service to manifest. Like the Kumaras, which we're talking about today, they were jnanis. They're actually given as an example. There's 4 types of pious people who surrender to Krishna. They're given as an example of jnanis. They had full knowledge. That's what that means. They understood, I'm not this body. So what happened was they were traveling throughout the universe and they came to Vaikuntha. And famously, they tried to enter Vaikuntha and they were stopped by Jai and Vijay. And they got in an altercation with Jai and Vijay, and they cursed Jai and Vijay. And upon cursing Jai and Vijay, and the Lord, he became, like, what's going on in my kingdom? Something is off. So the Lord flew in on Garuda, and the Lord appeared, and there's a beautiful description of the Lord in the 3rd canto. It's called The Description of the Kingdom of God. It's a beautiful chapter of the Bhagavatam, the description of the kingdom of God. And you hear all about Vaikuntha and how there's beautiful beings flying in lapis lazuli airplanes, husbands and wives, but they're married. Actually, everybody has a consort, but they're completely detached from materialistic sex life because they're absorbed in doing kirtan while flying around in lapis lazuli airplanes. Pretty amazing. And so then the Lord appears, and when the Kumaras smelled the tulsi leaves that were offered to the feet of the Lord, that were on the feet of the Lord, they became pure devotees immediately. So in that way, there's the famous Atmarama verse, which Lord Chaitanya elaborated and explained 64 explanations of to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. But the Atmarama verse explains that anybody who's in Atmarama, anybody who's self-satisfied, anybody who is actually self-satisfied, they become devotees of Krishna. And so you see that in even preaching, wherever you see that there's someone who's pretty developed in meditation or something, and you show them Krishna consciousness, it's like, boom, they become devotees. Because that Atmarama is attracted to Krishna. And Lord Chaitanya gives so many descriptions. That verse, one of the definitions of Atmarama that's given is Atmarama just means any jiva. So any jiva is attracted to Krishna. Everybody's attracted to Krishna in all respects. But as they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everybody follows my path. Everybody's following the path of Krishna. And Prabhu, Ananda Kirtan Prabhu was speaking last night. He was saying the inconceivable fact that the Lord is in every atom, every single atom Krishna is in. And yet we think it's very hard to be Krishna conscious, but Krishna is in every atom and as the super soul. And in every case, the super soul is trying to guide the living entity back home, back to Godhead. All you have to do is get out of our own way, really, and then we can enter into the spiritual world. So, just taking it back to the beginning, we may have our own agenda, and in that way, it'll always halt our devotional service. So we can learn from the Kumaras that they had no other agenda, which is very nice. They just surrendered to the Lord with full body, mind, and soul. So whatever position we may be in, whatever our karma may be, whether we're brahmachari, sannyas, grihasta, whether we're changing ashrams or we're not, in any case, let's make Krishna the center. And in that way, we can actually make progress. Right? Haitu kapratiyata, unmotivated, uninterrupted bhakti yoga. Then we'll have yayatma suprasiditi, we'll have the real satisfaction of the heart, of the soul. Yeah. Is there any discussion points we can do, Lavanga?
So you're mentioning in the beginning that, to the degree that we act independently, that will suffer, and how we have to follow the acharyas. And the situation with the four Kumars is always very interesting to me, because Lord Brahma is an acharya, and he needs to fill up the universe. Yeah. And he's asking the four Kumaras, help me and get married. He's not asking them to get married for lust, like somebody would maybe if they were on the low of our ashram. Yeah. And it seems like they're acting independently of the acharya. Versus, you'll see like with Kardama Muni and Priyavrata, that they act according to Lord Brahma's instruction. So how are we to understand the example of the four Kumaras when it seems like they're acting independently of the acharya? And we know in the Bhagavad Gita it says if one doesn't do their duty because they don't want to get entangled or they think it might be difficult, they're in the mode of passion. But we know the four Kumaras are not in the mode of passion. So yeah.
Good question. Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vrajaham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshashamim asucha. Krishna says, abandon all other dharmas and surrender. He says, mam ekam sharanam vrajaham, make me number one. And that's what they were doing. They were making Krishna number one. And you could say, oh, well, Brahma's the representative of Krishna. He's saying do this.
Right.
But, on another level, the Kumaras are also the heads of their own sampradaya, So we can't understand exactly what that, what's going on there. I mean, we can't fully understand. I'm sure there's some purports that are more elucidating in regards to that if you read that section. But at least my understanding is they're setting an example. And I've also heard this, but I can't quote a Shastric reference. I can understand that I've been told this by senior devotees that if the guru asks one to get married, the person can reject.
Yeah, that's from Mahabharata, and I believe Srila Prabhupada put that as well. That's what I was gonna see if you were gonna bring up.
But I can't quote exactly where it's from, so I'm just saying that, putting that out there. But I've heard that if the guru asks one to get married, then that can be rejected. It's one of the things that can be rejected if the guru asks, and also if the guru asks one to remain brahmachari, that also can be rejected because it's might not be safe for some people, So in any case, I can't understand the mind of the four Kumaras, but they're setting an example of putting Krishna before everything else. Putting the desire to perform devotional service before everything else. And in the case of Priyavrata and Kardama was desiring to get married. He had that desire. But what's beautiful about Kardama, I was going to speak about Kardama, because Kardama is a wonderful example of everything. Karma Muni is one of my favorite people in the whole Bhagavatam. Because although Karma Muni had that desire, he didn't act upon it. He allowed the Lord to arrange it, which is really what's beautiful. And then he was meditating on Krishna for many, many years. He was performing austerities. And he had that slight desire, inclination to have a wife. And he just was thinking, you know, the Lord will fulfill my desire or he won't. That's up to the Lord. And the Lord appeared before him. He was so immensely devoted to the Lord appeared personally before him. And Karma said, my Lord, I love you. I want to serve you, but then this is also there. This desire is there, which is so good. It's a great example of being open and honest with Krishna, which is, I was talking to Parameshwar Prabhu, and he actually said that, he says, one of the reasons I feel so happy and blissful is because I'm honest with Krishna. I'm not trying to hide, or trying to be something I'm not, or feel bad, it's there. And I'm offering what I have to Krishna. Kalakanta Prabhu told me that too, very wonderfully. Like, we can't, oh man, I'm so falling, that's, no senior devotee likes that. And therefore the Lord doesn't like that. Better to be like, my Lord, I have this desire, but I'm still yours. I'm still grateful to be in Krishna consciousness. I'm grateful to be chanting Hare Krishna. And, I'm praying for purification. And so, Karma Muni demonstrated that quality. And the Lord said, okay, well, in 3 days, a wife will appear. And then Swayambhuva Manu beams in. Which I always say beams in with him because you never know how he gets to just appears on the scene, he just beams in. Swayambhuva Manu beams in with beautiful Devahuti. And he says Swayambhuva Manu is also a Mahajan. And he says a really enlightening instruction. He says, this desire you have is being fulfilled by providence. And therefore, if you accept Devahuti as your wife, there's no degradation on your part because it's coming of its own accord. He says, otherwise, if you were to be like what Kamakami, that verse, I can't, the Sanskrit, what is it? Describing how, just like waves in the ocean, just like the rivers are flowing through the ocean's never disturbed. There's that word Kamakami, means like desiring to fulfill our desires. So if we want to be Kamakami and go like, I have to act on this desire. The instant you do that, you've surrendered to Maya. That's when you've entered into the material energy. Now I'm walking into the dark dimension because now I'm acting on my own desire. I'm doing my own thing. And what does Krishna say? He says, those who act in false ego, they will be lost. So Karma Muni says, Karma Muni, you're not degrading yourself because this wife has come to you on its own accord. I'm offering her to you. You don't have to come ask me. You're a great Brahmin. You're a great ascetic. And for you to come before me or to come before a father and ask to marry the daughter would be degrading to you. Whereas since I'm offering her to you, I'm offering her to you. This is coming of its own accord. Therefore, I beg you accept. And so Karma Muni did. And Karma Muni is a great example of it's described that he accepted. He was speaking with Swayambhuva Manu, and then it's described he immediately went back to thinking of Krishna. So he accepted the wife. He had his desire fulfilled, and immediately went back to thinking of Krishna and in meditation. And then Devahuti served Karma Muni very nicely for a long time. And they enjoyed immensely. You can't find, like that is intense enjoyment, flying around in a mansion castle, space castle with maidservants. And, it's just like, it's like romantic actually, it's just like, she like goes in the water and all these like celestial maidservants like give her a makeover, and Karma Muni uses all these mystic powers, and they have a beautiful, appears to be a beautiful relationship. And at the end, Karma Muni lets it all go and goes back to Godhead. So this is a great example of a devotee who had one material desire. He had this material desire. He did it properly, he was so advanced. He had Lord Kapila as his son. Yet he still had one material desire. So we see how he used the whole thing properly and purified himself and went back home, back to Godhead. And then Kapila Dev enlightened Devahuti and enlightened all of us. So it's a great example. So Priyavrata, Kardama Muni followed the order of Brahma, but he still had that desire. Priyavrata, on the other hand, he also had that desire, but he was also blessed that Lord Brahma blessed him. That was it actually Narada Muni was like Priyavrata's guru, and then Brahma came down and overrode everything?
Yeah, Narada Muni was doing with him what he did with Daksha's son.
Narada Muni was saying, give up everything, be a renunciate, and then Brahma was like, no, we really need you to be king. And so he said, I bless you that, although you're king, you will never be entangled in material energy. And also, he left home, as a great devotee. So we see there's a process. And that's the Lord's mercy on us in the material world, that he's giving us facility to perform devotional service and to work out our material desires and go back home, back to Godhead. And, it's described the Lord has affection for all the 4 pious types of people that surrender to him. There's 4 types of pious souls that surrender to the Lord, and the Lord fulfills their desires out of affection, Prabhupada says. They're also devotees because there's an exchange of affection. But they're not necessarily pure devotees yet, but they will become pure devotees. So we're on that stage, and we're practicing rules and regulations. We're dealing with what we have to deal with. And you mentioned earlier about the goal. That's, a highly important thing. The goal is let's go back home, back to Godhead. Whatever we have to do in the meantime, let's do it. Do what we have to do. But ultimately, let's go back home, back to Godhead. Let's not get distracted by, ISKCON politics, ashrams, all these different things. Actually, those are all just means to an end. But most importantly, we were given the gift of mercy of Srila Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya. Chant 16 rounds, follow 4 regulative principles, do some service, read the books, take prasadam, chant and dance and be happy. Learn the philosophy and go back home, back to Godhead. Let's do it. Lolita?
So you mentioned, about Krishna being in every atom, and that Krishna says, that all are on his path. So why specifically should we choose this path? Because so many people will say, oh, all paths lead back to God.
Nice question also. Yeah, well, all people follow Krishna's path in all respect is speaking on a grander level. I mean, everybody, no matter who, Maya Dakshena Prakriti Suyate Sacharacharam Etunanena Konteya Jagat Vipavivartate. Krishna is the supreme controller of the material energy. Everything is working under his direction. So you can't do anything separate of Krishna. So in that sense, everybody's following Krishna's path. And the goal of this world is ultimately that all the souls become liberated and go back home, back to Godhead. So in that sense, everybody's following Krishna's path. But like Govinda Prabhu, I think he says it very eloquently. He says, everything is Krishna's energy, but not every energy brings us closer to Krishna. Mm-hmm. That's very eloquently put. Everything's Krishna's energy, but it doesn't always bring us closer to Krishna. So we choose this path because this path is the path of pure devotional service, and it brings us very close to Krishna very fast. You can take the elevator or you can take the stairs. Some people want to take the stairs, and they're less intelligent. That's a fact. So yeah. I got the
I'm not real familiar with impersonalism, but I was surprised that, the Kumars rejected Lord Brahma's instruction, and then they tried to enter Vaikuntha and before they were even personalists.
Yeah, I always wondered that too. I've also thought that question. They were liberated souls, and I mean, ultimately, it's like a pastime.
Yeah.
And we can say that, we can think like, how what are the politics of the spiritual world, so to speak. But actually, it's the Lord's arrangement, perfect, that they weren't able to enter, actually. They were stopped. And the Lord had the desire to come to the material world and arrange it. Because ultimately, it's described by our acharyas that, Jai and Vijay, they're pure devotees, they're, Lord's associates. In Vaikuntha, they can never fall down, but yet they became bewildered by the Lord's arrangement, and they mistreated the Kumaras. But that's impossible, but they did by the Lord's arrangement, just like Arjuna becomes bewildered. And so they stopped the Kumaras, and then by the Lord's arrangement, the Lord appeared, and the Kumaras became purified and entered Vaikuntha. So that was the Lord's arrangement to elevate the Kumaras and to perform his pastimes of killing Hiranyakashipu and Shishupal and Ravana. And so, yeah.
When you see that a lot, you'd be really surprised that
It's all
it
under
was
the
an illusion.
internal potency, Yoga Maya.
Right.
Yeah. Hey, nice question too. Nice questions, all of you. All right.
Thank you.
Gandharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki.
Let's try.